in the mystery cults, where, remember the tradition in these mystery cults, and the Eleusinian mysteries and so forth, is you cannot say about what you have seen. And indeed, the Greeks were very emphatic about this. The most literate Greeks who were initiated into the Eleusinian mysteries, Aristotle, Aeschylus, these people would not talk about what they had witnessed in the Eleusinian mysteries. So nobody's really sure about what they saw, although scholars have pretty much pieced it together and figured it out. It's just the performance of this ritual that can be, it's fairly well documented. But no one's certain exactly what it was that they saw. The suspicion is that what they saw in these mysteries was so much beyond words as to be inexpressible. And one of the Gordon Wasson, who had written the book The Road to Eleusis, had studied the use of hallucinogens in these mysteries. Ergot was the hallucinogen that was used in the Eleusinian mysteries, and so they were probably having these visions that, you can't tell another person what an LSD trip looks like. I mean, there's no way to describe it. You just have to try it and see for yourself. So there's that kind of dimension there where the mythic revelations have to do with mysteries that are ineffable and cannot be spoken about. But nonetheless, we do have the emphasis on the mouth. The mouth comes in, and the Muses now come in, and also the muse is etymologically also related to the word for mouth. So the Muses come in, and the Muses are the ones who sing the mythological songs of the universe that the poets hear. And so when they're writing, they're listening to the inspiration, the divine beings, what Steiner would say would be angels, coming down and speaking to them of the mythological mysteries of the cosmos. So then if we write these structures in cross-section, and this itself is a performance of the integral consciousness structure, writing things in cross-section rather than the perspectival, which looks at things from one point of view only. Here we have the magic and the mythic. We might as well mental and integral in cross-section also. Whereas the primary sort of idea in the magic structure is unity. Everything is interwoven with everything else. Polarity is the primary idea in the mythic structure. Now we begin to get this differentiation of the heavens from the earth. And the laws of the heavens are different from those of the earth. It's not the case in the world of Paleolithic man, at least as far as we can guess. Everything is connected with everything else in a seamless interwoven unity. The myths of the separation of the heavens from the earth come from the mythical consciousness structure from ancient Sumer, 3500 BC, in which the laws of the heavens are eternal and the earth has to do with time. So that you begin to get that separation along with the separation of the idea of the soul and the body. This inner idea of the soul begins to come into being. So the magic structure is outer directed and the mythic structure is inner directed. The primary geometrical symbol for the magical then is just the point. The world is composed of this sort of point-like unity. In the mythical now we move into the circle, which of course is the snake biting its tail. And not only that, but we move from spacelessness to timelessness to a sense of spacelessness and cyclical time. Time is now coming in, and we have this idea, Joseph Campbell's idea, was that right about in 3500 BC, what you got was the birth of astrology, in the sense that the entire civilization was worked out as a mesocosmic, the human body, the human is the microcosmic, the mesocosmic world that was the imitation of the cycles of the planetary bodies. And that was the sort of primary inspiration for the mythical consciousness structure as far as Campbell was concerned. He called this the way of the celestial lights. As above, so below, as Plato says, time is in the moving image of eternity. And so that's the mythical consciousness structure in contrast to the magical. And the mythical then is just sort of one-dimensional, and the magical, I'm sorry, is one-dimensional, and the mythical is two-dimensional in that sense. When we move into the mental structure, what we get as we move from unity to polarity is a sense of antithesis, which is sort of, the yin-yang idea is the idea of mythical polarity, where you have this if you have the dark, you have to have the light. And you have the ambiguity where the dark contains a little bit of the light, and the light contains a little bit of the dark. So there's that mythical ambiguity. Not so in the mental consciousness structure. In the mental consciousness structure, beginning with the Greeks, something either is or it isn't. It's very dualistic in that sense. A is A, but it can't be B, and B can't be A. They have to be separate. So you have this new separation. You have the laws of logic coming in the Greek world. And it's indeed in the Greek world, 800 BC, that we have the mental coming in. You can put a date on that, 800 BC, for the mental consciousness structure. And then in the integral consciousness structure, we have what he calls diaphaneity, and that's a hard thing to understand, but we'll get into that in a moment. So we have outer, inner. The mental is once again outer directed toward nature, and the integral is once again inner directed. And the mental consciousness structure is now is three-dimensional. It's 3D, and now we have a sense of three-dimensional space. It's no longer spaceless, and we don't really have much of a sense of time. Time is still sort of two-dimensional, but the structure itself is three-dimensional. So we have an increase as we move from these consciousness structures in dimensionality, from one-dimensionality to two-dimensionality to three-dimensionality. And with the integral consciousness structure, we'll have 4 dimensions because time comes in, and time is, indeed, in the Einsteinian worldview, time became the 4th dimension. Space is 3-dimensional, time is the 4th, and the space-time unity. Now, with respect to the mutation of the mental consciousness structure, Gebser points out that it's very interesting that even as far back as clear back into the mythical consciousness structure in the time of, he's not very positive about the dates, but you start getting these names such as Manu and King Menes in Egypt, King Minos, and all of these are words that are etymologically forerunners of the word from which mental is derived. And these sort of 3 kings all date from about 2000 BC. So already you're beginning to get an early foreshadowing of what is going to come in terms of the mental consciousness structure in this period. So as we've seen, we have this series of consciousness mutations, and the integral consciousness structure coming out of all this begins to sort of, one other thing is the primary geometrical figure here is the triangle. The triangle in the mental consciousness structure is the vanishing point on the horizon, the vertex, where you as the person who is perceiving a particular space is the base of the pyramid and the vertex is at the vanishing point. And that's also this sort of sharp tip of the mental consciousness structure that cuts this circle open. Just as Columbus, in sailing off toward the horizon, cut open the world-bounding serpent and broke that enclosure, that enclosed mandala world. And so the triangle, and mental consciousness thinking is always triangular. You have this idea of thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Everything comes out in this sort of triadic mentality. So anytime you have this emphasis on Trinitarian thinking, you have the mental consciousness structure. Jung was the one who began to bring in psychology, the feminine fourth. He said when he looked at the Trinity, if you look at the Trinity, what's missing from it is a feminine dimension. So the female is the 4th dimension. Just as Einstein is working out time as the missing 4th dimension in the space-time unity, so in the mythical world, Jung is realizing there's a dimension missing here, and it is the feminine. So he sort of plugs the Virgin Mary into the Trinity as the missing 4th. And then the Church's idea of the Assumption of the Virgin Mary, when they made that official in the 1950s, was their sort of idea of adding Mary as the missing 4th into the Trinity. So anytime you get this fourfold thing, we're moving into the integral consciousness structure, which is 4-dimensional. And the mental is 3D. So the primary symbol actually is the sphere, the geometrical symbol. And that's the sort of image of the cosmos that we end up with in the Einsteinian worldview, is this gigantic vision of space and time as this huge sphere, this curling back in on itself. So in a certain sense, we get the integral structure as an ability to sort of make use of these earlier consciousness